Hello everybody, it's Walter, your favorite historian, educator, professor, and social studies extraordinaire, here today to answer a question that I have heard from many of you. That question being, can the United States adopt a new constitution? And the simple answer to that question, folks, is yes. The Constitution itself provides two mechanisms located in Article 5 for changing the document or even potentially abolishing it and instituting a new one. The first is the congressionally proposed amendment process, which would of course require a proposed amendment to be introduced in either house of the United States Congress, then subsequently ratified by a minimum of a 2/3 majority in both houses before being transmitted to the states, where it would then have to be ratified by the legislatures of or conventions in at least 3/4 of the states. That is at least 38 of the 50 states. That's a pretty high bar, folks, which is why it has only been successfully done 27 times in the nation's history since the first 10 amendments were added to the Constitution in 1791, aka the Bill of Rights. The second method of potentially creating a new constitution is by way of an Article 5 convention, something that has never been done, all right? That would obviously require an application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the states to call for a convention of proposing amendments to the United States Constitution. So because a formal convention would be needed to draw up a new constitution, the second method would obviously be the preferred one. Here, the first logical step would be to propose an amendment which would obviously cancel out the current Constitution in its entirety. So, the new document would then be drawn up at this constitutional convention that would have been called by the legislatures of 2/3 of the states for proposing amendments. During the course of this convention, that amendment to cancel out the current Constitution would be done, and a new Constitution would be drawn up at the same time. Now, we're not going to get into how this convention would be constituted, how the delegates would be chosen, who would be the presiding officer, how long the convention would be allowed to exist, all right, because the Constitution itself provides zero guidance on any of that. So all of that, folks, is entirely up in the air, okay? So upon drawing up the canceling out amendment and then drafting of the new Constitution itself, both of these would be submitted to the states at the same time, logically. The canceling amendment would need to be ratified under the current procedures. Like I said, it would have to then, assuming it was approved by a majority of the delegates at the convention, it would be 2/3, in likelihood, just like this if the amendment was coming out of Congress. It would then need to be ratified by legislatures in the states, 3/4 of the state legislatures, or by conventions in 3/4 of the states. Again, that would be at least 38 states. That's a 75% margin, 38 out of 50 states. And the new proposed constitution would need to be ratified by whatever ratification process is contained in the new document. Assuming both were carried out as stated, the old Constitution would be canceled out in its entirety, and the new Constitution would come into being. Really that simple. In all likelihood, there would obviously be a grace period given with phasing out the old Constitution, probably at least about a year at minimum, and, the effective date of the new one before it comes into being. It would still, in all likelihood, the new one would come into being as soon as the old one obviously goes out of existence. But it would probably be, I would assume, the drafters would likely, upon ratification of the canceling amendment provide a year grace period before the full cancellation goes into effect and the new Constitution would come into being, all right? Giving the states time to update matters beforehand and get everybody on board with this massive change in our fundamental law. So that, simply put, folks, is how the United States could easily adopt a new constitution if it chose to do so. But it would all start with the demand of the American people. All right. So therefore, with that said, being that the United States can legally adopt the new constitution, I pose to you, ladies and gentlemen, should we? All right. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments if you dare, and I will be happy to give my own perspective on this subject. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something, and I hope you expanded your intellectual horizons. Knowledge is power. Take care of yourself, and remember this from my teaching role model, Mr. George Feeney. Believe in yourself, dream, try, and do good. And I will talk to you at the next video. Professor out.